Today what we're going to do is a 3-year update. So how did flip top hold up after 3 years? I'm going to start with the pad because the pad is something anyone can build, even if you don't build the topper or the bench system. This is one of the things that we like most about the build because it saves your knees climbing in and out. Now, I did use commercial grade Velcro and I did use a pretty thick yoga mat. I did not skimp on the Velcro, so you can see that it's held up quite well. There's no real rips in the pad. I'm gonna do a zoom in here and kind of show you, do some B-roll here and show you how it's held up. It's not perfect, but it's 3 years of loading mountain bikes. You can actually see where the grease is at from the chains. Mountain bikes and camping gear and paddle boards. So let me zoom in and just kind of show you the pad. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because we did a build video on the actual pad. One of the biggest mistakes we made with the build was, or I made with the build, was thinking that I could waterproof it after we put it together and put it on the truck. I thought, hey, let's just go around, use some caulk, use some silicone, and fill in the holes to waterproof it. That did not work. So if you do a build like this, highly recommend that you think through the waterproofing process. I do think you could get these pretty close to 100% if you plan it out and if you use the right material. We were able to use caulk cord. This is this weather seal. I'm going to zoom in here in a second and show you where we used it. So it's like putty and you just put it in the crevices. However, because we did it after the build, I wasn't able to get it into the 80-20 as much as I needed to. So that's what I'm saying. When you put those pieces together, if you pre-fill with some type of weather seal, or I would even try the caulk if you did it before you put the camper together, I think you'd have a much better or much more waterproof shell. I'm going to throw some B-roll up right now and show you where our biggest leak is. Our biggest leak is in the corner. We do get some here though. So let me show you that B-roll. Now what I'd like to do is zoom in on the end and kind of show you how we put this weather seal in. And then we're going to jump on top of the camper and show you some things there as well. Okay, zooming in, you can see here where we put the weather seal. Like I said, I thought I could just put it in the 80-20 slots. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And you can see after 3 years, it does get dirty. Now, the nice thing about this entire build is that I can tear it apart and put it back together. I wanted to jump up on top of the camper and show you what it looks like from the top. After 3 years, you can see here that the weather seal that we used got dirty. And you can see here, because of the slots being wide open, dirt falls into slots as well as water. Now, if I zoom over to where the actual topper fits, you can see that that is pretty waterproof. Water doesn't get into the top through the actual tonneau cover. Now, if I had to do this over again, what I would probably try is some type of T-slot cover. Now, unfortunately for the 10 series, they only make plastic T-slot covers. So you probably would have to seal that up with some type of silicone or something. Now, if you use 15 series, they say they have an aluminum cover. So something that fits in this T-slot that is water resistant. So think about this. If you put 1, 2, 3 of those here, then you wouldn't need to use this strip here to try to seal the tonneau cover up. So that is something that you may want to think about if you do use 80/20. The 15 series is stronger, but it does way more. The advantage is if you can fill in these T-slots, especially with the aluminum, and make it waterproof, I think that would be a huge advantage. Two more things when it comes to the actual waterproofing. You can see here that I used the panel gaskets on the outside. I mentioned this in the waterproofing video. I would definitely put these panel gaskets on the inside. So when we do the rebuild, we'll put these on the inside and then run a bead of silicone on the outside. You can see here that the 6mm aluminum fits in extremely well, so you're not going to get any water penetration in this. However, since we used 4.5mm here, we have to do something different. So if I would just switch this on the inside and then put silicone on the outside, that should waterproof it a lot better. That, I think, covers the waterproofing part, which is the part that when we do the rebuild, I'm going to put a little bit more time and energy into. Like I said earlier, if you use some type of silicone or caulk before you put everything together, I think you can get this thing pretty much 90% waterproof. And I may order some T-slot covers. I have to do the plastic ones for the top so that those top rails don't get dirty or fill up with water as well. So, okay, let's move on to something different. We're going to move on to the inside and talk about the bench build. The bench system is held up quite well. However, there are some things that I would do differently. One is the counter bores that I used. See how I have a counter bore there, but I was cheap and did not get a counter bore on this side, and that was a mistake. I would definitely get the double counter bore. Something else, I would never use these 2-hole brackets. I would definitely use a 4-hole bracket or a gusset. These 2 holes are not strong at all. I wouldn't use these throughout the build at all if I had to do it over again. And that includes the topper. Something else that we actually did change, so I'm going to zoom under here, see if I can get a shot. I actually put a rubber strip underneath, and that keeps it from sliding around. This is pretty cool, works really well. And if you watch the actual build, the long video about how we built these, I used a turnbuckle to fasten. Used this to fasten to this hook. And because I use those rubber gaskets, I don't have to use the turnbuckles anymore because the benches don't slide around. Works really well. The third thing that I would do differently, I would find a better way to secure the boards. Right now we have a compression fitting that you can see here. It works. If the compression fitting isn't secure, then I use a shim to secure it. And then we also have a small plate that I use to keep the boards in place. So they don't go anywhere. It's just not the most ideal setup. It's a little cumbersome to remove all of those when you want to move the boards around. So I don't have a better solution. So that's all we have for now. Finally, for this video, what I'd like to do is talk about the actual topper itself, some things I would do differently. I mentioned this in some other videos, but the actual screws do rust. So I would order some other screws or some more screws just so I had them, and I'd swap them out. The screws do back out, so you do have to check them. They will not back the whole way out, or ours have not backed the whole way out because we overbuilt the camper. when we rebuild this, I'm going to use fresh screws and Loctite. I already priced it out to replace all the screws that I need. Probably going to cost $100. So $100 every 3 years to me is it's not that bad. So I'm going to walk around though and show you which one's rusted. What you're going to notice is the ones that actually have some movement to them are the ones that rusted the most. And the ones on the inside, those have not rusted hardly at all. So why don't I just do a walk around and show you which components you may have to replace if you use or build your topper with this 80/20 and the screw system. I'm going to start a walk around here on the back. You can see here how the screws have rusted and some of the actual hardware has rusted. You can see it's usually the ones that move. I do need to order a new hinge. The other ones are okay. But you can see the screws on the hinge have rusted quite a bit. I don't even know how to get those out. If we move around to the side, the aluminum composite has held up well. The plexiglass has held up well. It really is just the rust. And the different components rust. The different nuts and bolts rust. Let's move inside. Now you can see that the bolts on the inside don't rust as nearly as much. Some of them don't rust hardly at all. Now this corner here is the corner that we had the water leak. These don't need replaced. So you can see the huge difference between the bolts on the outside and the bolts on the inside. Bolts on the inside held up quite well. I mentioned this in another video, however, I would have the 80/20 tapped so that I could use metal plates on the ends and screws for the end caps instead of plastic ones with the push-ins. That's a wrap for this video. I wanted to take some time and show you what flip top looks like after 3 years. We really enjoyed the build. We did learn a lot. We're going to do a tear down and rebuild it. There's only 2 things we're going to change. 1, we're going to change out the rusty bolts. And 2, we're going to try to pre-waterproof it before we put it back together. And those are really the only 2 changes. I know we talked about some little things here and there, but those are the only 2 changes that we're going to do when we rebuild the tonneau. I know we talked about some negative things today and things we've learned, but there's so many positives. We did a dislike video. The positives though, with the bug net and the convertible and the bench system and being able to haul your bikes without taking your tire off, there's so many advantages. So hope you enjoyed the video and take care.